Welcome to the Queer Witch Project, your resource for all things queer and witchy. I am Damona Peacock, a fabulous, non-binary, neurospicy, ordained queerdo with a fascination for all things cycles, symbolism, and patterns.
And I'm Moonkittee, your queer femme, poly kitchen witch, and proud geek. Today's topic is one we've talked about many times, and we wanted to break it down a little bit more. So, this is Queer Tarot Revisited. And because there's a lot we're going to go over, this is part one of
Of four.
4 to 5-ish, depending on how you want to interpret it. But yes, no, it's Queer Tarot
I
Revisited, the Major Arcana, Part 1 is our official title for today.
There we go. And I love talking about tarot. I have been thinking about this talk a lot, what it would look like for us to go more in depth with the tarot on our podcast. And I think I've concluded that I can never stop talking about tarot, and I could do a whole podcast about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can reel me in as much as you need to.
Good to know. Yeah, no, it's definitely there is no doubt that you could do an absolute podcast over every
Yes.
single card. A full
Yes.
half hour to an hour podcast just on each card. That's not what we're going to go in here. We're going to
No.
try to be a little bit more concise and really only go about 2 or 3 minutes into each card because we have a lot of cards to get through. There are 78
78.
cards in the tarot deck. So here we
And
go.
And some give or take because everybody has their own interpretation, and sometimes people sneak in extra cards. So,
Right. Yes, that was the thing I was going to mention at the end. But yeah, no, they're 78 main. If you're talking about tarot that's generally based on the RWS, the Rider-Waite-Smith system, um, loosely, generally kind of based on that system. Now, again,
yeah.
different artists and different authors go and change that quite dramatically, but the basic symbology of that kind of system versus like the Thoth tarot or the Marseille tarot or the Lenormand tarot or something else, which have completely different systems of how their cards work. So we're talking about tarot as it relates to loosely RWS interpretations, as problematic as that can be. And if you want more about the problematic aspect, go back and watch our first Queer Tarot episode because we won't go into that
we've
one today.
we've been there, done that.
Exactly.
Um, Before we dive into the bits and pieces and parts
Mhm.
of the tarot, overall, what is the tarot to you?
The tarot, as I've looked at it, is of course it's the Fool's Journey. At least we're talking about in the aspect of the or the Major Arcana rather, as the Fool's Journey. And for me, when I'm talking about tarot and I pull something that's in the Major Arcana, that is I interpret that when I'm reading things as major life events. So these are things that are going to happen on more of a bigger scale, on sometimes a global scale, depending on the circumstances and situation. And this is the fun, unique part is every reader reads a little bit different. So that's kind of how I see it playing out. But how about you? How do you see the
Well,
major?
tarot can be so many different things to different people, like you
Hmm.
said, as depending on their approaches. Some people see it as divination. Some people see it as like a psychological tool that you
Okay.
can. So I kind of see it as like a universal tool of like human experiences, and there's a lot of mystery and mysticism and multiple symbology written all up and down in it. Speaking of, cycle symbolism and patterns, it's obviously one of the things that my brain loves to gravitate towards because of the depth of meaning that you can find in the tarot. So again, on a podcast, all we can really do is scratch the surface.
Hmm.
But I feel like the major arcana or the fool's journey is relatable to the human experience,
Hmm.
because we're always kind of going through these cycles of learning and growing and failing and then picking ourselves back up and learning and growing again and finding some kind of success and meaning through it all, and also sometimes giving up and taking a rest. So I feel like the major arcana will find people where they're at, especially when you're reading for them with tarot. It really helps people kind of anchor into on the grand journeys and cycles that we go through in life and over again. Where am I right now on that cycle, on that journey?
Hmm.
So I think the fool's journey is kind of like your journey and my journey. It's the human journey. Um, it's kind of encapsulates like, am I the fool?
Hmm.
Are you the fool? Are we all the fools? Because I think sometimes we do all embody that sense of adventure, of
Hmm.
learning, of growing, of going on some kind of a journey.
Being a human in an electrical meat bag, we all go through a journey that is called life. And whether you call
Hmm.
that life or the fool's journey or whatever it may be, that's different words for the same thing,
So I love
ultimately.
how the tarot kind of will spell it out for you, and you can do it as a check-in to see like, well, where am I at today on this journey of life?
Hmm.
Or and of course you can always ask it within specific parameters of with my love life or with my
Hmm.
career or within my family, where what do I need to know? So and like you said, the major arcana is like the big life moments.
Hmm.
Or the big mysteries,
Hmm.
the magic.
Right. And based on that, your answer, I would also add to mine. When I look at this, I read tarot as a perspective. So I don't read tarot as divination in the sense of this is what you should be doing, as in you're going to get hit by a red truck next week on a Thursday, so make sure you're not there. That is not the way that I read tarot. I read tarot as a perspective of what you are going through in, like you said, that major life event, and where to bring to life and clarity some of the things that you may not be seeing, or to have the tarot tell you exactly what it is you need to hear, and you know you need to hear it. So that's
You already know
also,
it, but you
you
need
already
to
know the
hear it.
answer. You don't want to just deal with the answer, but it's that clarification of knowing what you need to do, or what's the circumstances that are happening around that situation, so you can make a more informed choice.
I always tell people that I don't read the future with
Hmm.
tarot. I read the energy that's around you. And the energy that's around you can kind of talk about the potential of the future, but it can also talk about what you're going through right now, or even what you're healing of things that you've been through. So it just really depends on what's being asked, where it hits, and what it brings up. So I see the tarot as a tool that helps facilitate sometimes very necessary conversations, and it helps people pause and check in. One of my I see a lot of dichotomy in the tarot. It's one of the things I want to talk about. There's going to be cards that kind of advise you to look outward, and there will be cards that will advise you to go inward. There will
Hmm.
be cards that would advise you to take action, and there will be cards that advise you to stop and wait and pause and do nothing.
Hmm.
And the mystery is in within all those dichotomies. There will be cards that we will say are masculine or male, and there will be cards that people will traditionally see as feminine or female. And again, it's not about the man or the woman, or if whether you're a male or a female or however you're perceived. It's about every human being has access to channeling masculine and feminine energies and have masculine and feminine traits about
Hmm.
themselves. And so that's why, again, it's the tarot is kind of encompassing the entirety of a human experience and breaking it down
Hmm.
into 78 easy steps.
Right. Super easy. Well, let's jump in then
All right.
and start off with the zero card or the fool. And jumping in is pretty
I was about to
accurate when you're
say,
talking about this card,
when
right?
you say jump in, do you mean like wander off a cliff accidentally? Because, yeah.
Well, yes, but I also have a deck where they're not wandering off a cliff, they're diving off a cliff with a rainbow behind them. So again, different artist
Yay.
interpretation of either way, we are jumping, falling, walking into the unknown, or in this
I,
case, the clarification aspect for what is
I like to,
zero the fool.
yes, I like to call it a leap of faith, the leap
Hmm.
of faith card. The fool is zero, right? So
Hmm.
it's before the beginning because we don't
Hmm.
really begin the numerical journey until we pass into actual numbers.
Hmm.
And zero isn't always zero is seen as a placeholder, but not always as a number.
Hmm.
So that's also kind of encompasses some of the energy of the fool. It's an egg, I am only an egg.
Hmm.
Sorry to quote Heinlein. But the Fool is new, fresh, naive, about to begin a journey, taking a leap of faith. What
Mhm.
is the Fool for you?
I tend to see it as that sense of innocence and wonder. And again, I think of it in the place of of that moment of spirit before you are born, because this is the spark of energy that sees all the potential that could potentially be there. And the minute you are given life, you are now on this journey itself. So it is that first step, that you're growing. And again, as through all cycles, you go through phases every year, but it is that start at zero, leap of faith, promise of adventure, starting something new that you don't know where this is going to go. You don't know how this is going to turn out. All you can do is take that first step. And I think of the quote, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And that is the idea to me of the fool.
I like that energy of like you've got everything to gain and nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
So just dive in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it can be starting a new journey. It can
Mm-hmm.
be for queer folk, it's like coming out of the
Yes.
closet, no longer having to hide something,
Mm-hmm.
um, reaching a new level of authenticity, of comfort within
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Really not being afraid to start something new, to be a beginner at
Mm-hmm.
something.
And in many ways, as queer folk, I tend to take the queer folk through the lens of, like you said, coming out of the closet, but also stepping into ourselves.
Yep.
Because as queer folk, we go through many stages where we've come out of so many different closets, especially if you're like witchy or of some sort of non-traditional spiritual bent. You come out of one closet only to come out of another closet to potentially come out of another closet or so, depending on practices and choices where you go. So again, I tend to think of it as that stepping into your authenticity, because ultimately who you are is what's going to come out through the course of whichever journey you're at. And new journeys start again at every point in your life.
Yeah, and I honestly think that it takes this level of naivete because otherwise you can talk yourself out of
Mm-hmm.
coming out of that closet by being like, well, I'm going to get rejected or all these bad things are happening to me. But you have to have like that level of naivety of like, well, this is who I am and maybe something good will come out of this. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I'll find what I'm looking for if I can just be myself or,
Mm-hmm.
that sense of, yeah, that innocence and pure authenticity and no we haven't been shaped or formed yet by the
Mm-hmm.
experience. We're just getting started.
But
Just
we
getting
have to do
started.
so. We have to take the leap.
Right. You got to fall off the cliff. You
Exactly.
know,
All right.
every idea is born somehow.
How about the magician? The card number one.
So we start out at one with the magician, and the magician is the link between the ethereal or divine and the manifest, the physical reality.
Mm-hmm.
The magician is the one that gathers its tools, that does the magical working, that works towards a goal, that spark of that ignites, that puts thoughts into action.
Mm-hmm.
When you come upon the magician, what are you feeling from him?
With magician, again, I tend to see that for that first step, if I'm coming from a new spirit, newborn into something new, the first thing is you recognize the self. The magician is yourself. You are the magician,
Mm,
like you said. You're and being a magician, you have to learn magic from someone else. There's also aspects. Again, there's that teacher aspect, but it also is the aspect of the self, is you are creating the magical life that you are choosing to be at. So while the magician cards are traditionally seen as masculine, I don't this is where we're talking about the masculine versus feminine divine energies and everything else. I don't see it in that energy sense, other than masculine energy has traditionally been compared to ego and
mm,
self-awareness and everything on that. So for me, again, the magician is about coming into your own, being who you are, knowing you have the tools and the personal power, and it's owning yourself, and you choose how you're going to wield your magic as the magician. So when you're looking at this card, is it's about how are you going to wield the power that you have with the situation that you're in.
yeah, because humanity, especially those of us who, speak in within the realm or experience within the realm of spirituality a lot, we really do see ourselves as like that in between
Hmm.
spirit made manifest, right?
Hmm.
So um, I like the idea when the magician comes up that you're experiencing a soul lesson and it's about your personal empowerment.
Hmm.
You know, we talk about with the fool, it's that stepping through the threshold of or
Hmm.
off the cliff of coming out. And the magician is fully owning the self, like you were saying. You know, it's that number one, that first, and it is seen as masculine, and it's also seen as an outward spark, like an
Hmm.
outward expression of your energy, your power.
Hmm.
So, what tools do you adopt to in your magic? What, starts with you.
And that idea, again, through that queer lens of it being that because it starts with you, you don't need to conform to someone else's idea of what it is or who you should be. You can march to your own drum. You can
Mm-hmm.
be that unique person, again, stepping into that authenticity of who you are. Um, and that is a very queer interpretation
Power.
of the power that that comes through the magician.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's owning it and also
Hmm.
knowing that your unique expression of self is magic in and of
Hmm.
itself.
Yes.
That is your magic that you were born with. And society has tried to deny you of that power.
Hmm.
And the magician is always a reminder of like embracing, getting that back,
Hmm.
embracing that for yourself. And then we move on to,
The high priestess, number two. So for me, when we're talking about the high priestess, she is the counterpoint to the magician in
of
a lot of
course.
ways. Because if the magician is about yourself and your ego, the high priestess is about the mystery and the intuition coming in. So again, traditionally seen as female, she is the flip side to the magician. So as you said, magician is outward energy, this inward energy, the mysterious, the unknown, that sense of intuition, and how
Yep.
learning to trust your own knowledge and trust yourself
Hmm.
as you are going through and learning.
I also think as a counterpoint, so she's balancing out the magician and the ego, that she's like that idea that there is a higher power or a sense of, guidance, spiritual guidance coming
Mhm,
at you. She's part of the mystery. She's behind the veil. He's
mhm,
out there like, woohoo, here, look at my tools. And she's like, but are you listening to your wisdom?
mhm,
And she's behind, she's the keeper of the veil of mysteries. There is a lot of, unknown about the high
mhm,
priestess because she is kind of like a higher power, but she is um, very much that counterbalance of trusting
mhm,
the guidance that you get, trusting your intuition
mhm,
and getting comfortable with all the unknowns.
mhm. I also tend to see the high priestess in the more formal aspect of it. So, because the next two cards we'll talk about are the flip side, also masculine, feminine, but they have different types of energy. So, like we've talked about before, the high priestess is, when I say high priestess, I think back to my traditional Roman Catholic upbringing of the priest, only with the feminine version, and that center of ritual and rules and things that play around rituals to a formal, there's a more formal nature. There's a more formal aspect to the high priestess that talks about things done in a very specific way to help you learn something and get that understanding and knowledge and that kind of wisdom, but not necessarily in a more fluid way. It's knowledge with lessons behind it. It's dance steps. It's organized formal dance steps versus an interpretive dance, if that makes any sense.
Sure. And whereas we're going to contrast her with, the next two cards, the Empress and the
Hmm.
Emperor, but she, by contrast, you'll see her as, since she represents like the deep mysteries, she is vast, she is depth, she is cold, she is dark. If the magician, yields the light of the sun, she is the light of the moon, she is the night sky, she is, all of that we know we don't know, and all that we don't know we don't know. So
Hmm.
she is very grand, she is an elder, and within queer space, I often think about, where we seek the queer history keepers, the queer elders, those that have been through some stuff and seen some stuff,
Hmm.
and the older generations that are, very compassionate but truthful and maybe jaded a little
Hmm.
bit in their passing down of the wisdom of the history, the oral histories that we don't always get to share or hasn't always been recorded, but has been talked about from
Hmm.
generation to generation. That's what I think about with the High Priestess. She's very
Hmm.
deep,
Hmm.
but she
And it's
can
one
be
of
cold.
she can be cold, but it's also like I said with the elder queer generation, I think it's interesting because at some point in time we will become that older generation.
Yeah,
And everyone will get to a point where they have that, where they've lived through different learned
yeah.
experiences and learned from those who've come before them. So it's something you will eventually grow into that is as part of itself, which is very interesting that it becomes the beginning of the major arcana, which again, which will cycle back into itself.
And
But
so moving forward, I
mhm,
always, in terms of numerology, I like to see it as one and two unite and become
mhm,
three. Because the thing about the major arcana is they also get assigned numbers. As we talked
mhm,
about, the Fool is 0, the Magician is 1, the High Priestess is 2. And so if the Magician and the High Priestess are kind of like this male, over big, big, powerful, empowered masculine and feminine energies combined together, they're going to birth the world. And all
mhm.
of a sudden, we have
The
at number three,
Empress. We
the
have the
Empress.
Empress. Yes. And Empress, with that birthing of the world, I love that because to me, the Empress is Mother Nature. She
Yeah.
is Gaia. She is that aspect of the world. She is abundance and growth and sustenance and voluptuousness and all those things that tie back into nature relationship. Whereas again, the High Priestess is that cold, deep intuition. She is life and life
Yes.
energy and bringing things into the world, into creation.
And she is giving life and she is nurturing and she is that mothering spirit of the tarot. I call her mommy. She's
Hmm.
my tarot mommy. But she is definitely the mother archetype of the tarot, where the high priestess is kind of like, goddess.
Hmm.
This is mother.
Hmm.
So she provides. She is fruitful. She is nurturing. She's definitely, maybe the fool along his journey got a little bit overwhelmed by the first two
Hmm.
very powerful experiences, and she's there to help ground you, help
Hmm.
nurture your way through. She's a soft landing place.
Hmm. And kind of in queer culture, I tend to see her through like the lens of the leather mommy.
I
In
like
that
that.
she's at any given event, she's making sure there's a food plan. She's making sure that aftercare is happening. She's making sure that everyone's needs are taken care of. And it's ultimately that caretaker kind of archetype
Mm-hmm.
that comes down to it. And again, that caretaker archetype has nothing to do whether you are male, female, somewhere in between, or on a different spectrum. It
Yep.
really doesn't matter. That energy is universal.
You're exactly, and you have a right, a human right to access the inner caretaker within yourself, no matter how you were born or what you were conditioned to believe. Everybody cares, and
Hmm.
everybody wants, has some kind of feeling inside that they want to help in somehow for some reason, whatever your motivation is. But we all have that aspect where we want to attend to caretaking.
Hmm.
So that way you can tap into the wisdom of the Empress and bring in that loving energy. I always think of the queer aunties that will adopt all the baby queers,
Hmm.
put them under the wing and, help little gentle guidance here and there. But, the queer, they're just full of love and welcoming
Hmm.
and resources.
The people at Pride parades holding free mom hugs, free dad hug signs, they are the embodiment of the Empress.
Ding, ding, ding.
Right
Yes,
there.
very much.
That is energy. And again, that's beyond gender. That is that energy, like you said, of the queer welcoming family.
And so far with patterns, we've got kind of like a hot, cold, now we got warm.
Hmm.
What's
So
going on
coming into
next?
next, who do we have next?
4. which is the
Mm-hmm.
emperor. And
Right.
if the empress is the mommy, then I see the emperor as hello, daddy. But not necessarily in a fun daddy kind of place. He's the like get shit done daddy kind of
Hmm.
place. But he's the structure and the rules and whatever we have to put in place to make sure that you feel safe and taken care of, that's what we go to the emperor for.
Hmm.
But he does require that you put in some work for that.
Right. Now, if for me and my interpretation, if Empress is Mother Earth and the Emperor is Father Time, like you said,
Oh, that's great.
structure, organization, breaking things down
Exactly.
to organized things. So organized units of time, organized rules, organized things that kind of come together to give you that standardized measure that you can use for all the things that you need.
And again, remember, while the fool is encountering these
Hmm.
archetypes, we also can embody these archetypes. So,
Right.
you know, uh, sometimes we have to set a routine or set a schedule or
Hmm.
follow put stuff on our calendar and actually follow through. I don't know.
Hmm.
So there is a time and a place for our daddy vibes, for our emperor to come in and help fix things and structure things and organize things. Otherwise, things just don't get done. I mean, these queers, have you met them? We're full of chaos.
Oh yeah. And again, which is why I think of what through the queer lens of the emperor as like you said, daddy, but not only daddy, but leather daddy.
Leather
And
daddy.
I am throwing a little bit of the BDS community in here, which you may or may not be familiar with. But in this sense, that leather daddy and the leather community, this is the structure and discipline, but it's also making sure that the rules are followed so no one gets hurt. And again,
Mhm.
and in that aspect of the leather daddy, they may push or challenge you to learn or to learn the limits of discipline and order to help you grow. So they sometimes
Hmm.
push you and challenge you to places beyond your limits to help you achieve the next growth cycle. And that's a very specific
Okay.
aspect of it in the queer sense that tends to fall in the realm of the leather daddy.
I like it. Very. I'm here for it. So after our mothering and fathering, daddy, mommy, tarot structure, think about as a child growing up.
Hmm.
You worship your parents.
Hmm.
They guide you, they keep you safe, they keep you fed, they give you the best start that they could possibly can, they give you the structure and the rules to follow. But at some point, we're going to rebel against our parents and we're going to seek a higher authority somewhere.
Hmm.
And that's when we move on to
The Hierophant, number 5. And I
number 5.
know you have a fun relationship with this particular card, don't you, Damona?
It just haunts me. It comes up for me all the time, and I'm like, Hope, no. But it's about higher learning and
Hmm.
a higher power and higher education, but kind of like the structures of that. Like I feel like I can be very rebellious and chaotic, but I feel like I can do that because I put in the time to learn the foundational stuff that I'm rebelling against.
Hmm. So,
So yeah, the Hierophant, it's I do rebel against it, but it's kind of sometimes an important. All right, I'll give it some credit. It's important sometimes.
and it's funny, I have a big poster, and again, you can't see it. For those of you who are listening, you can't see it. And for those who are on YouTube, my background is blurred, but I have a picture on my wall of the Hierophant from a particular deck that I use. And to me, I have the exact opposite kind of interpretation, or not exact opposite, but a different interpretation of the Hierophant in that it's the sense of learning, it's the wise. So for me, I had again, the strict Catholic upbringing and everything else. And at some point, I kept asking why. And
Hmm.
she is the witch. To me, she's not the Pope anymore. She's the witch.
Yeah,
She is opening
I
my
like
mind
that.
to new knowledge, new aspects, into this different sense of how to connect with spirit and that search for divine answers and the search for the
Hmm.
reason why things happen or the meaning of things. I love that fact that the Hierophant is learning and the Hierophant answers questions and their spiritual guidance, but in order to be a good spiritual guide, they have to also be on their own quest to learn. So,
Yeah, and I like that. I like that the Hierophant is the archetype through which you can hold things into the light and point out the
Hmm.
hypocrisies and decide what
Hmm.
your values truly are. I think that that's really, getting into the core of your spiritual self, of your sense of why you're here. Why are we living? Why is life? What is our
Hmm.
purpose? You have to encounter the Hierophant, whether outside of you or inside of you or both, in
Hmm.
order to get those answers. What I think is very fascinating, what I love is that once we meet the Hierophant within ourselves or along the journey, we are then moving forward into from 5 to 6,
Hmm.
where we meet
The
the
lovers.
lovers, which
Right.
so I think because I think it's very poignant because when you get through what's the purpose of life, I think a lot of us land on to love or
Hmm.
and be loved, and not necessarily from the same sources. It's just to experience love in all of its forms. And what is love? I can't help
To love
myself.
and be loved in return.
And so we have the lovers, and the
Hmm.
lovers is about love.
Hmm.
It can be about a loved one, like a romantic relationship, but that's just on the surface. It
Hmm.
goes so much deeper than that.
Right.
For me personally, every time I have a lover's card, because again, we're talking about major arcana, we're talking
Hmm.
about big life things. Everybody's hustled with love on some level at some point, multiple points and multiple
Hmm.
levels. But I always like to ask people, depending on what's being asked, is have you explored what your true desires are?
Hmm.
Take these extenuating circumstances out of it, and the ifs and the cons and the pros and all the things and the fears, take all that out and ask yourself, what is it that you truly desire? Because if you don't know what that is, how are you ever going to make your magic, make your
Hmm.
manifestations, to put out your intentions into the world? What is it you truly desire?
Hmm.
What
And
is
I see it through, again, through that lens of love. And love to me is this idea, it is so many, it is so layered. It
I mean,
has
we did a
so
whole
many
episode
different,
on it.
yeah, we did a whole episode on love magic. And for that reason, because it has so many layers that, like you, it's not necessarily about romantic love. It's about what it is you want, like you said, that truly desire, but um, what is driving you? What is driving you towards something? Because love, in my experience and through the lens that I read through, love has always been a primary driving force in what I do and how I react to things, whether it's love of excitement or love of my family or love of romantic partners or love of knowledge or love of something else. There's so many different aspects of it. But again, it's that desire. It's love is a driver and a desire or a
Mhm.
motivator for me.
And it's
So
also
I tend
a
to pull
love
that
for
into the lover's card.
humanity,
Hmm.
or a love for the human experience. Like, hell, it sucks feeling this feeling, but at least I love being alive, that kind
Right.
of energy too. So it's like again, it's so deep and multi-layered.
Hmm.
And then coming back to the lovers in the queer space, I love when we can find decks that have not just a heterosexual,
Hmm.
example of what love and lovers can look like. But remember, one of the mantras of the queer community is love is love.
Hmm.
And we shouldn't be putting love into boxes that have to
Mm-mm.
look any particular way, because, all families are different, all relationships are different, all humans are different. Love is experienced and given and received in so many different ways. And it's the only answer to the hatred and bigotry that we
Hmm.
experience as queer people, is to love harder, to love more, to love ourselves in spite of what we've been told how we should feel about ourselves. So love is very powerful. The lover's card is a very potent and powerful energy.
And remembering that with love comes challenges and obstacles. That love is never without grief.
And it's not always
So there's
enough.
love is love, and sometimes love is everything, and love can also not be enough. It depends. You know that it's going to bring in challenges, and can you overcome those challenges and how you overcome those challenges. So to me, that's that flipper darker side to the lover's card. It is that knowing things are going to bring up challenges. When we're looking at the lover's card, it's really about how what is the querent asking when I'm doing this in a reading, whether I'm the querent or someone else, is that they're talking and asking for a love reading. I don't often like getting this card pulled because it tends to people see it and look at it from a lens that oh, this is something that's going to happen. It's like, wait, yes, but with any new relationship comes all of these other things. Are you prepared to deal with the baggage that comes with any kind of relationship? So there's that darker aspect of the lovers is with the lovers comes the lovers baggage.
Well, absolutely, because everybody has shadow sides,
Hmm.
and so do the lovers, and very much you see the best in someone when you're
Hmm.
falling in love with them.
Yes.
But everybody has, their baggage, and
Hmm.
love, truly, love is a power that can see you through some of that darkness,
Hmm. Yes.
But I think
And
also it's important that we have love for ourselves
oh,
too, and to not,
a
yeah,
1,000%. Now, love for
yeah,
yourself, and that's something that, again, sometimes the lover's card can be that are you loving yourself enough to be
yes.
open to a connection with someone else? Because there's
Yes.
also your own work in that shadow aspect that needs to do something.
Oh, I
Is
just
it?
see so much dualities too,
Hmm.
because as we talk about giving love and who we love and all of that, this external experience of love, when we also have to remember that there's that internal experience of
Hmm.
love, not just loving ourselves, but being open to receiving love from others, and not
Hmm.
always ideally how we give love, but so being flexible in how we can receive love too, being
Yeah,
open to receiving love.
exactly. Exactly. Okay, so once we
So.
get through love and we get to the lovers, we are on a roll. So where do we go next?
Is this the chariot?
This would be the chariot,
I
number
like your honor
seven.
roll.
We are moving, we are shaking. The chariot is momentum and movement.
And I think it's important because no offense to all these lovers out here, but sometimes relationships become distractions from our individual journeys, our
Hmm.
purpose, our whatever it is we're trying to get out of life. We can get very distracted by hormones.
Hmm.
And the whatever drives the lover's experience. But sometimes you got to get back into your chariot, you got to get the reins in your hand, and you got to drive this thing called life for yourself. You have to make
Hmm.
the choice, come back to make the choices. It's momentum, it's power, it's movement, it's energy, but it's also very much harnessing the power of both the logic, the intellect, the human side of ourselves, and the animalistic, powerful, raw, energetic, feeling part of ourselves. So these two, again, I said the tarot is going to be full of dualities, and you think
Hmm.
about what is driving the chariot.
Hmm.
And the power to harness both of those things and make some sort of progress from them.
Hmm. And looking at this one through the queer lens, I don't have anything better to add to my interpretation of the chariot than you did, just because that tends to be exactly it. It's meat suit driving
Are you
force.
talking about
What
us
is
very
rebellion?
straightforward?
It was a very straightforward answer. Yes, it is forward motion, not necessarily straight, but it is
You're
forward
right.
motion. But no,
Okay.
the queer lens that I love for the chariot because it has the same thing. If there is one image that could completely embody the chariot for anyone who is queer, it would be a U-Haul. And because in so many different ways. And now hear me out. There's the lesbian joke of what's a great second date? A U-Haul.
Yeah.
And moving someone. But a U-Haul is a vehicle that you use to transition into something else. You are moving from one point A to point B. You are moving from an old life into a new life, whatever that may be. You may be
Mhm.
moving from my own experience, moving from a house and an ex-husband and a few bunch of other things, moving into an openly queer lifestyle. It is that moment of moving of momentum, of
Mhm.
change into something new that you've actively made that decision and you are going, you are just doing it.
Yep.
So, and
Yep.
you're moving into your destiny, but it's also about community because rarely, not saying never, but rarely do we move into something brand new this much alone. Almost every time we have friends who help us move. We have family sometimes who helps us move. We have a community, oftentimes, if you don't have anything else, that will get together and welcome you into something once you've
You mean
moved.
all those connections we built in the lovers phase,
Hmm. Exactly.
right? They help
Right.
you. We make those because they support us in our moving forward in our own adventure in our life paths. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's about being on the move and being willing to move forward, putting the wind in your sails,
Hmm.
harnessing that power of being of movement. And then once we move through the chariot, we come upon number 8, the
Hmm.
strength card. And so often the strength card is a woman and a lion, and she's
Hmm.
taming the lion. I don't know, the lion's her buddy, but what do you make of how do you interpret the strength card?
The strength card for me, especially coming right after the chariot, which is that movement into something else, the strength becomes that your realization that, oh shit, this just happened. And now
Hmm.
I have to be strong. And I am stronger than I think I am. So the woman looking at the lion's den, or now you've moved into a new place and suddenly you realize you're alone for the first time in your life. And how are you going to do this? You developed that inner strength to make sure that your meat suit is fed and watered and sleeping and doing all the things that you need to do. It's
Building new routines,
build
building
exactly that inner
it's
emotion, inner strength, and
yeah.
that ability to say, okay, this is a new aspect of me. This is a new part of myself that I may not have known before, but it was there all along. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here now.
So for me, I think of strength. The word that I really like for the strength card is fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that inner fortitude. So where the chariot is all about, again, it's an outward energy. It's a very progressive, like vroom energy. The strength card is actually kind of a pause or an inward energy because it's not about what you can lift. It's
Mm-hmm.
about what you can shoulder, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. It's not about your, feats of strength in the external world, but it's about your emotional fortitude. It's about not having to fly off the handle. It's
Mm-hmm.
about taking challenges and working your way through them. I like what you said about believing in yourself and knowing that you're actually stronger than you've given yourself credit
Mm-hmm.
for or than other people have given you credit for.
Mm-hmm.
The strength really is asking you to shore up your inner reserves.
Mm-hmm. And deal with, like I said, that resilience, especially again as queer folk in the face of bigotry and ignorance.
Hmm.
And in a world where we are currently living right now, we
Hmm.
need this strength card more than anything, I think, right now, to be able to
Yeah.
move forward and move out, is determining where that inner strength is and what you can do to shoulder the
Yep.
burdens.
Speaking of the world and how it is right now, moving on from facing our, taming that lion inside and showing our inner strength, we move into the hermit. And the Hermit is actually one of my most favorite cards. It's number 9.
Mm-hmm.
It's we're in a 9 year, so some people would say it's a Hermit year. And the Hermit is there's different layers to the Hermit, but the first thing the Hermit is
Mm-hmm.
asking is for you to pull back, pull in, take a break. And sometimes we cannot keep engaging with the bigotry.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot keep engaging with the fear mongering and the hatred. And as queer people, we need to pull back, take a break, get back into ourselves and turn off all of the
Mm-hmm.
noise from the outer world. So I will go into hermit mode. Yes, I love to hermit, to hibernate in the
Mm-hmm.
wintertime. Hermit mode. Sometimes I've burnt out as a neurospicy human. I am on burnout. I have experienced way too much input and sensory input, and I need to shut down. I need to hermit. I need a break from the
Mm-hmm.
outward input, and I need to like really go inside and figure out what's going on inside.
Mm-hmm.
So hermits are magical to me.
Yes, absolutely. And again, the idea of the hermit is that wise sage in the hills. Often the imagery is the lone sage holding a lantern with, again, that spark of knowledge and the knowledge that you, like I said, you can only get from going internal. and stepping back and thinking about everything you've been through, everything you've done, where are you at, and assessing and really kind of taking those moments to pause and breathe and figure out what works for you and what you're going to do next, because that is something that is really challenging to do when you're being overloaded sensorially. Just constant input of media and social media and
Yeah.
life and weather and just
Yep.
family obligations and community obligations and
You're
all of
allowed
those.
to unplug from time to time.
Exactly.
Yeah. And here's the thing about the hermit. The hermit has a perspective.
Hmm.
Um, in that nine position, we have almost completed a whole, we've more or less completed a whole numerology cycle. So
Hmm.
thinking, like you said, you imagine him up on the cliff with his lantern.
Hmm.
He's got perspective. So not only does he see all the bad news, all the ilk, all the hate, all the bigotry, all the ill of
Hmm.
the world, but he can also see the good news, the
Hmm.
love that is spread. He can see people helping people. And yes, there's disasters, but also there's look for the helpers. So the hermit gives you so much wisdom that sparks that light of the lamp, and you cannot stay hidden away.
Hmm.
You need to bring that wisdom and that perspective and that light back into your life, back onto the journey, back onto
Hmm.
the path. So while it's so important to hermit away sometimes and to get your time to yourself to really realign and rebalance and ground yourself, you will be going back into the fray, but you will be doing it with the light of this lantern, of
Hmm.
this perspective that you have gained and earned. So the hermit is such an important and wise, um, magical being that you will become and experience
Hmm.
archetypally.
And like I said, you take that experience and you move forward. And that
Always.
takes us into the next card, which is the Wheel of Fortune.
Do, 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 do.
And this is actually one of the cards I really like. And I know it's a hard card because the Wheel of Fortune is saying basically the only constant is change. And you've taken the lessons you've learned from the hermit and you're going to use them in this next cycle as you're going to go. Movement never stops. Even when you are hermiting and you are taking a break and everything else, the world is still going on around you.
True.
So it is constantly in motion. The wheel is constantly turning for that's where you get this wheel of fortune. And the wheel of fortune can bring changes in fortune, perspective, circumstance. Because again, as the hermit's coming out, they're hitting different points on that wheel. And they could hit a point where, oh my God, they're at the point where everything they're saying now they've learned, and it's going to bring prosperity and abundance. Or everything they thought they learned, the world has moved on from that, and now they've got to learn something else. And I attribute my fascination and my connection with this card to being a five life path, which is that idea of progression and adventure. And you can't have adventure without change. So, with that five and with my Sagittarius spirit, with all of these kinds of things that come together, I am constantly feeling and looking for what's coming next and what is going to happen next. How am I going to see the world next? So, I need that hermit to pull me back. To stop me from sometimes going too far, but also again knowing that the wisdom I've learned from stepping back will only help me on the next phase.
And the Wheel of Fortune is also there to remind us that this nothing stays the same. So
Hmm.
especially in times of grief or downtroddenness or
Hmm.
struggle and challenge, and realize some of the comfort you can take is that it won't always feel this way. It won't always be
Exactly.
this way. There will be a change in fortune, and sometimes you don't have full control over that.
Hmm.
And that we are meant to weather, for better or worse, multiple destinies, multiple changes in fortunes, multiple life experiences. So sometimes you're going to be on top of the wheel, and sometimes you're going to be on the bottom of the wheel. But the one thing to remember with the Wheel of Fortune is if you go to the center of the wheel, you can watch as the patterns, cycles, and symbolisms float on by and realize that you're the one at the center of
Hmm.
your life. You don't have to be all out in the fray of it all and on the roller coaster rides and going on the ups and the downs. Sometimes you can pull back into the center of the wheel and realize that, yep, today feels good, but tomorrow may not. And even though I will handle it tomorrow when I'm having a down day, because the following day, the wheel of fortune will turn again, and you just never
Hmm.
know where you're going to land. Good things can be coming your way. You have to believe that.
Hmm.
But also that you can handle when the fortune falls the other on the other ways. It's,
Hmm.
topsy-turvy, but through it all, the constant is that you're the witness.
Hmm.
You're at the center. You're watching the wheel go around. You're watching it all go by. And just to dive in a little bit with the numerology of it all, it's 10. So a lot of people, especially with our 10 fingers, our 10 toes, and our 10 number-based systems, we'll see that as the completion of the cycle. But as a numerologist, 9 is really the completion of the cycle, and 10 is the starting of the new cycle, especially as you're pairing that one with the 0.
Hmm.
Um, so even though here at the Wheel of Fortune, uh, was about halfway through the
Hmm.
major arcana, we're probably going
Hmm.
to wrap up this episode.
Yes, after this one.
There is a whole new round about to be started past
Hmm.
10 for you to come back to next time.
Right. There is one more thing that I want to add before we do our outro. And yes, we're gonna go on to the next cycle here. But for me, the last thing that I can think of when I think of the Wheel of Fortune is, the saying, it will always get better in the end. But there's a
Mm.
flip side to that. It'll always get better in the end. If it's not getting better, it's not the end. The wheel keeps turning.
Ooh.
So that is how I think of ultimately the Wheel of Fortune card.
I like that. If it's not better yet, it's clearly not the end.
It's not the end. The
Oh.
wheel is turning, still turning. So,
Ooh, I like that.
so we'll leave you on that
All
with the
right.
first half of the major arcana. So join us in a couple weeks and we will go on to the back half of the major
And
arcana.
if you have any specific questions about that you would have always wanted to ask to experienced tarot readers, go ahead and pop that into the comment section,
Please.
because there is so much more that we're going to be talking about when it comes to
Mhm.
tarot interpretations and through the queer lens of tarot. So we may just get to answering some of your questions.
Yes.
So, with that, I just want to say thank you for listening to the Queer Witch Project. And if you like what you heard, make sure that you give us some thumbs up and some 5 stars or 10 stars or however many stars they let you give us, because we like because we like that positive reinforcement. And give us some comments. Tell us what you've been curious about when it comes to tarot.
And if there's a topic you want to know more about, or an episode topic you would like to suggest, contact us at thequeerwitchproject@gmail.com or find us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram with the handle at Queer Witch Project. We upload every other week. And remember, queerness is a key to magic.
Be yourself and love rebelliously. Bye.
Bye!